Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be talking about is stop and search. You've probably heard of it before. So yeah, we're just going to talk a bit about why it's used or why it's supposed to be used, and what you can do if it happens to you at a protest. So stop and search, the police are only meant to use stop and search in the prevention of a crime or to investigate a crime that's already happened. So those two things. However, in practice, it's often used as a really racially discriminatory tool, to kind of target Black and brown people, kind of going about their business. So there's loads of statistics going about how stop and search targets people, and you can obviously find all that online. But yeah, what we're going to do is kind of talk about when it's used at kind of protests, and also like what you can do. So it's often really difficult to prepare for like being stop and searched because obviously it just happens sometimes. We don't expect it to happen. It just kind of happens out of the blue a lot of the time. So it's quite difficult to prepare for it as such. But yeah, the most kind of important thing, I guess we'd say, is to try and kind of remain as comfortable and kind of calm as possible in that situation, because that will kind of ease what's happening there. But yeah, that's kind of just a suggestion. Under no stop and search power are you actually legally like required to give your details. They can't force you to give your details just because they're stop and searching you. So it's just good to bear that in mind, that you can still answer their questions with no comment, and you don't have to give your details to them. Sometimes people in the past have said when being searched, I would go wisely, officers. It sounds like a really weird thing to say, but go wisely is like the acronym that the police have been like taught to use when carrying out a stop and search. So each letter stands for a different thing. So G is like for grounds, O is for object, etc. We don't need to remember it. We don't need to know it. They should know it. And that's why it can sometimes show them that you kind of know what you're talking about a bit more. So yeah, but you don't have to say that. That's just what sometimes people have done. Pull up this. So the police have the acronym called Go Wisely, as we just said. And there is another acronym called Search that we recommend that you use. So the first one, S is for stay calm. Just in that moment, try and stay as calm as possible. The next one, E, stands for eye control, or eye contact, sorry. Sometimes it can help you feel a bit more in control of the situation. However, we're not going to say like every single person should keep like eye contact with the officers, because obviously we understand some people just don't want to do that, and that's perfectly fine. These are kind of just general things. A is for aware. So the police, when carrying out their stop and search, they should tell you the following stuff. And that's where we break into another acronym called the 4 W's. So W is for who basically, is who they are. So you should check their ID kind of number on their shoulder, or they should tell you who they are, and they should tell you their warrant number as well. Why? So that's why are they stopping you? Note down like the legislation that they're using, or anything else that they've said basically in that explanation to you of why they're searching you. The other W is for what, so what they are looking for, and that's the O from Go Wisely, that's object. So what they're searching for basically. Sometimes it's like spray paint or like glue, I don't know. Those are just two examples. But yeah, note down what they think you're carrying and also why they think you're carrying it. And the last W is where, and that's where they're from. What police station are they from? What police station are they based at, or where do they work, basically? They should tell you that, but if they don't, sometimes it's a good idea to ask ask that information. The reason kind of behind the last one leads kind of into this one a bit, the R, and that's for receipt and record. So make sure that you ask the police for like a receipt. Sometimes they'll call it a docket. But yeah, you can ask them for a receipt of the search, which you're entitled to. You're entitled to the receipt. And it's kind of proof that the search happened. And then it's like a description of what they think happened in that moment. And it's also sometimes worth getting a bystander. So someone who's nearby, just asking them if they can film that stop and search, and kind of focusing on the police, or they should focus on the police. You are legally allowed to film the search yourself. And if you want to do that, it's best to reach in through like what you're doing. So I'm reaching into my pocket to get my phone. Sometimes I'll say, no, stop, hands to the side or whatever. But yeah, it's best to just like walk them through like what you're doing so they're aware of like your actions. And that's so that the police don't kind of think you're reaching for like a weapon or like reaching for something else and jump at you, because we obviously want to avoid that. And the reason, also just to quickly go back to it, the reason why I said the last W kind of ties into this one is that if they don't give you a receipt in that moment, because they have to rush off to an emergency or whatever else, you can go to the station at a later date and ask for that receipt. You don't have to give your details or anything like that. It should be ready for you to get. Moving on to the C. C is for confident, so try and be as confident in that moment as possible. Obviously, it's like a really daunting, intimidating kind of thing often, but yeah, just try and be as confident as possible. And the last one is H, so that's for hold to account. That's telling a legal observer, or if you see a legal observer like across the street, then maybe just calling them over during the search, or calling through to the XR back office after the search. And the numbers here, it's 07749 335574. So yeah, you can do, you should do both if possible, but if there's no like legal observer nearby, then you can ring through afterwards and just explain what's happened. Or if someone's nearby, just asking them to call and like speak as it's happening. But yeah, that's kind of what the search acronym is. So we're going to talk a bit about your actual rights during a stop and search. This isn't obviously a full list or anything, but it's fairly good. Covers most of them. So the first one, as we said before, is that you're entitled to a receipt of the search. So after the stop and search, they should give you a receipt. If they don't give one, ask for it. And yeah, that's that. And if they take any objects off you, then it's best to ask for a receipt number as well, in case they don't give you one, in case they don't give you a physical receipt. And that's just so that you can get any objects back afterwards, or collect a receipt at the station. So, and also just to add, if afterwards, like you want to make a complaint about the stop and search, or you want to take like civil action against the police, or in simple words, sue them for it, then having a receipt with their kind of outline of the event on it is often very useful to have when challenging that afterwards. On the street, the police should only ask you to remove outer layers of clothing. So like if you're wearing a coat, then they should ask you but they can ask you to remove a coat. But yeah, outer clothing. They shouldn't then ask you to take off like your t-shirt or like your socks or like your trousers or anything like that in a public place. They can ask you to take that kind of stuff off and do a more thorough search in what's deemed to be a private place. Often that will be the back of a police van, and that is considered to be private. That's when they can ask you to take off like further clothing. They shouldn't do that. They shouldn't take you to a van for like a more thorough search just because they didn't find anything in their first search. That's saying that if they don't find anything, they don't then automatically have grounds to ask you to take off more clothing. You can also ask for an officer of your binary gender to search you. That's where reasonably practicable. At a protest, that's pretty much always the case. It should always be possible to do at a protest. It's more reserved for other type situations where an emergency search is kind of needed. Or an emergency search is needed. But, and yeah, the last thing is no personal details. So you don't have to give your details under any stop and search power. We've said it before, we'll probably say it again, but yeah, no personal details is key.
Okay, there are quite a few different search powers that the police can use to stop and search you. So we're going to talk now about the two most common types of search powers that are used at protests. The first one that we're going to talk about is reasonable personal suspicion under Section 1 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. So this has to apply to you as an individual. Okay, so an example is that you match the physical description of somebody seen, for instance, chalk spray painting a building. So just wearing an XR symbol or looking like a protester isn't enough justification, because it isn't specific to you in the same way that a physical description is. You're entitled to ask the officers what their suspicion is based on. And if they say that you fit a description of someone seen committing a crime, ask what the description is. The other one that we want to mention is a blanket power. So these have been fairly uncommon in an XR context. There are different blanket powers. One example would be Section 60 of the Criminal Justice and Police Order Act 1994. And this is something that's put in place by an inspector, allowing police officers to search for an offensive weapon. Blanket powers cover a specific area and are time constrained. So sometimes they'll be put in place in a particular area of London for a particular event, or because there's particular intel that there may be a crime during that period. But they can only last for a period of time. They can't be indefinite. So you can physically walk into one, but the same day and the same place, it may no longer be in place.